Alright, hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion Throwing in the Towel Week 5 edition. And this is a weekly segment where every week I pick one team and throw in the towel on their season. And with that, we'll go ahead and get right into it. Starting with the AFC East, which has two representatives this week, the Bills and the Patriots. And for the Patriots, they haven't played well on either side of the ball. Losing their last two games by a combined score of 72-3. As top personnel decision maker and lead skipper, Bill Belichick does deserve a majority of the blame for the team's awful start to this season. He is probably on the hot seat. I don't know. It's hard to think of New England firing Bill Belichick, but every great coach has their ceiling, and perhaps Bill Belichick has hit his ceiling. As for the Bills, the number of injuries suffered through their lineup is becoming highly problematic. Going into the game against the Jaguars, they had already lost Tre'Davious White to a season-ending Achilles injury. His bookend, Christian Benford, didn't play. Greg Rousseau and Shaq Lawson weren't available either. The Bills have firepower and offense, but their defense, well, kind of fell apart in London, and injuries certainly aren't helping. AFC North, only one team this week, the Ravens, and don't get me wrong, the Ravens are a good team, but the offense has just been too inconsistent, especially throwing the ball. Now, when it comes to throwing the ball, you could hyperfix or hyperfocus on Lamar Jackson's passing numbers or lack thereof, but Baltimore has a bigger issue with fundamental execution, like, for example, fumbles and drops. So gotta iron those two things out before. You gotta iron those two things out and just be a bit more consistent on offense. AFC South, two teams this week, the Texans and the Titans. And for the Titans, they continue to be one of the more inconsistent teams in the league, and that inconsistency has made it very difficult for them to establish any real positive momentum. Add in the fact that their vaunted run defense got exposed by a short-handed Colts team. Jonathan Taylor didn't even play a full game. You got beat by Zach Moss. Not a good look for them. Houston Texans, still have a long way to go in terms of being a contender. It's not going to happen this season, but C.J. Stroud has already made the Texans more competitive than they were a year ago. There is no more important function for an NFL front office than hitting on the quarterback position, and from all indications so far, the Texans have done just that. AFC West, one representative this week, and that is the Denver Broncos. And when trying to think about what I wanted to say about the Broncos, I thought I could just sum it up by saying the Broncos are bad. Really bad. More so on defense. Their defense is just terrible. Virtually non-existent. I mean, I'll give credit to Patrick Surtain. He had a sick interception, but Russell Wilson in the offense is not the problem. Granted, can't be fumbling the ball towards the end of the game when you're trying to make a comeback. That's an issue, sure, but that was an ugly game against the Jets, and again, just bad defense. So the AFC division representatives for this week: New England representing the East, Baltimore in the North, Denver in the West, and Tennessee in the South. Who is going to represent the AFC this week? It's the Denver Broncos. So keep that team in mind. We're now going to shift over to the NFC side of things, starting with the East, and we have the Giants, Commanders, and Cowboys representing this week. And for the Giants, well, this season wasn't supposed to go the way that it has. Last season they made the playoffs and stunned the Vikings in the first round, and you would have thought that this year was going to be a next step for the Giants, re-signing Daniel Jones, using the franchise tag on Saquon Barkley. It looked like the Giants maybe could have made a run for an NFC East title. Now, 5 weeks into the season, the Giants only have one win, and that was a comeback win over a bad Arizona Cardinals team. So nothing has gone right for the Giants. The offensive line is a complete disaster area. Daniel Jones has played terrible, and he's also hurt now too. And Saquon Barkley's also been hurt and out of the lineup. So yeah, when things were looking good last season, things have not been looking good this year. And ultimately, look, Daniel Jones has played terrible, but he does not have a great supporting cast, so really didn't do him any favors there. Washington Commanders, so there's no way to sugarcoat what happened. They got beat by a winless Bears team that hadn't won a game in almost a calendar year. That's embarrassing. And I think, in Washington's defense, was probably more embarrassed as they allowed big play after big play through the air. DJ Moore absolutely bullied their secondary. The offense was rendered one-dimensional by a 27-3 halftime deficit. And the Cowboys got exposed for what they probably are, and that's a second-tier contender. Mike McCarthy's new offense, that Texas Coast offense, I think it's called, doesn't really look better than the offense last year. Micah Parsons in the pass rush, well, when they struggle to get home, the secondary sans Trayvon Diggs looks average at best. Dallas, as it stands right now, has a better chance of missing the playoffs than making the Super Bowl. Maybe a bit of an overreaction. I still think the Cowboys are a good team, but clearly the 49ers showed where they belong in the hierarchy of the NFC. NFC North, Vikings and Packers represented this week. So after falling by 7 points to the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday, all 5 of the Vikings' 7 games have been decided by 1 score. And then losing 4 of them, any hopes the Vikings have making the postseason, well, those are quickly starting to evaporate. And it's not hard to see why the Vikings are losing these games either. They have 12 giveaways this season. That leads the league. Unless the Vikings start stacking wins and holding on to the football, the topic of conversation for Minnesota going into 2024 is going to be the future of Kirk Cousins. And, what do you do there? Do you re-sign him or do you just go somewhere else at quarterback? And look, I will stand by Kirk Cousins' side. I think the Vikings should re-sign him. I don't think it's his fault. I think ultimately there's more blame to be placed on the defense. Minnesota's defense is still not good. I mean, it's just not. And I feel like Kirk Cousins, I get it, he's the quarterback, but he has played well with what he has had, and he has a pretty good offense. Now, granted, Justin Jefferson went down with an injury, and he's out 4 weeks, so that might torpedo the offense. Maybe, we shall see. I mean, it's a good test for Kirk to kind of prove himself as quarterback. You don't have your best player on offense, so what do you got? But even still, the defense in Minnesota, still an issue. Issue last season is still an issue this season. As for the Packers, Green Bay's biggest problem right now is its quarterback. Love threw a pair of interceptions against the Lions, and then against the Raiders he threw 3 more, including one deep in Las Vegas territory that basically ended the game. NFC South, no representatives this week, so congrats to the NFC South. The towel was thrown in on the Panthers, so they're kind of out of this. They're out of this segment. The Falcons got to win, the Saints got to win, and the Buccaneers were on a bye. NFC West, so just one team here this week, and that's the Rams. And give credit to Stafford, he's playing well. Cooper Kupp is back. The Rams, may not be a contender, but they are proving to be a tough out. And with their next 2 games at home against squads that missed the playoffs in 2022, the Rams might at the very least be able to hang around the fringes of wildcard contention. So yeah, kind of a toss-up in terms of whether or not they actually make the playoffs, but looking at the NFC, I think the Rams are one of the top 7 teams in the NFC, so maybe not a contender, but I wouldn't be surprised if they make it. So, representing the divisions this week in the NFC, the Giants in the East, the Vikings in the North, and the Rams in the West. Who is this week's team representing the NFC? It's the New York Giants. So, go back to the AFC representing the Denver Broncos. Now we have the NFC representing the Giants. It's going to be Broncos versus Giants. Who is this week's team? Well, just to quickly recap, Week 1, we had the Arizona Cardinals. Week 2, we had the Chicago Bears. Week 3, we had the Carolina Panthers. Week 4 was the Las Vegas Raiders. And Week 5 is the New York Giants. So going back to the NFC and basically putting another team from that conference out to pasture, we can check off the New York Giants. And look, this season, again, I talked about it earlier, it has not gone according to plan. The Giants were expected to be contenders. They're not contenders. They're pretenders. Now, what can the Giants do about this? Well, unfortunately, or no, not unfortunately, what can they do about this? Well, you invested the money in quarterbacks, so might as well stick with your guy. I don't think firing the coach or GM does anything productive for your team, nor does a change at quarterback either, again, with the money that you invested. So stick with who you got at coach, quarterback, and GM, and continue to build that roster around Daniel Jones. Give him an offensive line that doesn't that doesn't get him beat up every single week, and get him some guys to throw the ball to. Because let's be honest, if you ask an NFL fan, an average NFL, you ask some NFL fans to name a wide receiver on the Giants, most people couldn't. I can, because I pay attention to every single team. But if you ask somebody who doesn't pay attention to every single team, again, are they going to be able to name somebody from the Giants roster that's a wide receiver? Probably not. And so yeah, that's this week's team, the New York Giants. And with that will conclude this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.